Welcome! Broadcasting the entirety of the Super Smash Bros. Community. This is Beyond the Metagame. I'm your host, Peon, this week live from Michelle Obama's studio apartment. I'm joined, as always, by my wonderful co-host, AV. AV, how you doing, big boy?
All right, can you please explain how we ended up here?
Look, man, last week we were in Poke Floats. We took a detour. I heard a familiar voice, and by God, did I see the former First Lady of the United States. You were there. You don't
remember? I must have been high on something in Poke Floats.
Whoever made Poke Floats was high, I think. But thank you for joining us today. This week we're talking about identities. We're talking about how playstyles interact with personalities. And we have a couple more announcements, Abby. We're announcing the winner of our big Super Smash Bros. Ultimate giveaway.
That's pretty exciting. I think that we had a lot of people enter our giveaway, at least relative to our like size as a podcast, and we've had, I think, 50 people enter the giveaway. We have a total of 63 followers now on Twitter. Which is kind of cool. And why don't you kind of talk about where our viewers are located?
Yeah, so me and Navy even talked about this. I mean, I have a degree in global studies. What does that mean? I've been trying to tell my parents because I truth be told, I really don't know. But that said, I'm finally gonna use it because we have an international audience. So we have some people from Japan, some people from Spain, and most surprising to me, people from the Netherlands all tuning in. So hey, thank you everybody for tuning in around the world.
Yeah, it's really neat. I'm really glad that you're getting good use out of your college degree because I sure as hell am not. So I think that we should talk about what we're going to get into today.
Yeah, I mean, today we're going to be talking about identities. How does the person behind the controller, how is that person manifested on screen? Is there a connection? What's that connection worth? Why is it worth talking about? All those kind of things.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're gonna get really into the introspective nature of what it means to connect with the in-game persona that you have, and why is this important? Why do we want to do this? Why is this valuable to us as players? And how can looking into ourselves and understanding who we are as players help us see that in other people?
Yeah, so you guys just got a bit of a teaser, but all that and more in just one moment. Welcome back to Beyond the Metagame. This week we're talking about identity. And I just want to open it up. I mean, I guess fundamentally the question I want to present to you is do you think that Smash is an adequate medium where you can express your personality with in game?
I think it's a very difficult question to answer, mostly because a lot of people express their personality in different ways. I think there's a lot of different avenues in the game to express yourself, but not all of them can really be easily kind of succinctly described by one word or by one part of the game. And the thing that's really interesting about this is the fact that people are usually kind of basically condensed down to one word. People are often reduced. People make reductive statements about players. Usually there'll be stuff like campy or hype or lame or slow. And I think it's really dangerous to make statements like this. I think identity is brought into the game in some level. There's probably some people who don't believe that is true, but I do believe that there's a lot of really good examples of people showing off their identity in this game. I think one to start off with a really prominent example, I think Mango, the melee player, is probably a good one to lead off with because he's commonly known for his really explosive, no holds barred playstyle. And I think I want to get your opinion on what you feel about this, about the player and whether he actually does match his personality outside the game.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting topic. I mean, you always hear. I mean, just in the, I think back to in the Battle of the Five Gods, which was like 2016. Now, it was a long time ago. There was like this great segment with D1 and four of the five gods. Hungry Box was not in attendance for this, conversation, but that was kind of what D1 was directing them towards. He was asking all the other gods, does is there a difference between Armada and Adam? Is there a difference between Mango and Joseph? Marquez. What is the difference between the guy on screen, the competitor, and the guy in general, right? And the consensus among the top players seemed to be that look, there isn't much of a difference. I mean, I love PPMD. I remember specifically was talking about how Mango in game, it felt like he would kind of poke and prod and almost dissect you with a syringe poking around in your brain. And in real life he would stir the pot and he would try to get reactions out of people, and he was very explosive and rash. And he claimed at least that playing against him is much like hanging out with him. And that's really, ever since I heard that, it's kind of gotten me thinking in those terms. And I have to say, I mean, I don't know Mango as a person, but at least people I know and care about and play against, I have also seen the same phenomenon. What do you think? I mean, have you also witnessed a correlation between play styles and personalities?
I want to kind of bring up an anecdote from our scene. So if you haven't listened to the podcast before, we are from a region called the Central Coast. And in the Central Coast, there were two main Falcon players. One of them is called Strawberry Justice. He's a very hype, very also very explosive, does footstool combos, does really crazy things.
I mean, his name's Strawberry Justice. Just think about it.
Yeah, he plays with the pink Falcon skin, breast cancer awareness Falcon, and he's a really really popular player for his personality and his in-game play. Now, on the other hand, although this guy doesn't play Falcon anymore, the other really prominent Falcon player in the scene was none other than our own Peon. Now, here's the thing. Here's the thing. Strawberry Justice and Peon were often compared. No matter how much Peon could try to style on someone or try to do cool things in bracket, Peon would be labeled as the uncool Falcon. Anything that he did would just be quote unquote optimal or for the win instead of like hype or exciting. And it got to a point where I actually think it got on Peon's nerves a little. And it was actually really funny that there was this huge duality that there can only exist a hype Falcon and this non-hype Falcon, just because like one of them does more back airs and more optimal jabs at ledge. And I think that's a good example of the fact how it's a little dangerous to basically try to base someone's personality and in-game play off of like simple words or just one characteristic.
Yeah, I mean, you're tracing the whole. There was this dichotomy. It did piss me off, by the way. I'm still angry about it. Jokingly, but there was this dichotomy like you were tracing of me being optimal and Strawberry Justice just being just cool, just oozing cool. And it's funny because as explosive as Strawberry Justice is in game, outside of the game he was a very reserved, chill guy. I mean, super dope, but really kind of relaxed, calm guy, and his playstyle was anything but. On the other hand, I'm bombastic. I talk too much. I was very explosive, but I jabbed more than any Falcon in the world. I played the most patient, slow Falcon you've ever seen. Yeah, so I suppose that's an interesting point to bring up, Bobby. You know, even though I do agree that your playstyle does embody at least an aspect of your personality very strongly, I do have to confess that at least in this particular instance that you brought up, it seems to portray the opposite.
I think that kind of goes into our main point is Smash really accurate at describing these things, and here's the thing. I'm gonna make a very strong statement. I don't know if everyone will like
Hmm.
this, but I think Smash describes some part of you, whether or not it's directly obvious or whether or not it's actually something deep, like more deeply subconscious. Now, here's the thing. When you look out at the very like you look at the outside, the exoskeleton of both of you, Strawberry Justice and Peon. Yes, you are very gregarious, as you said, bombastic. Someone who shows their emotions on their sleeve, very exciting to be around. And Strawberry Justice is really chill and relaxed and very just yeah, he is like a very uh cool person to be around. Now, now the thing is, like on the inside, I actually think subconsciously you guys want two completely different things. You're someone who clearly really cares about winning, and winning is honestly one of the most important things to you. Uh, so you're going to play Falcon as uncoolly as possible, and you're gonna do all of the stuff that like that no one that maybe no one would do because it seems like lame or it seems like unnecessarily optimal. Whereas his like the fun that he got from the game was from winning, but winning in like a really like stylish and crazy way. Now the thing is, it's not like you weren't being stylish at some points, but your prime directives are completely different, and that's where I think either your personality is reflected on the surface, or or it's actually reflected in basically this the submerged unconscious like motivation that actually tells what what your in your like I said prime directive is in the game.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's a pretty astute analysis, and I would agree with you at least in terms of what my motivations are. Um, yeah, completely. But one thing is, uh, I think it really calls into question the fact that Smash is so intimate. And what I mean by that is, you often hear like Zero or other top players describe Smash as being a conversation, especially in high level. One person uh, will pick one option and the other person will respond. And it's kind of this back and forth, deeply interpersonal connection that you have with your opponent. And I think one of the reasons why it feels so crushing to lose in a game of Smash or in a a fighting game in general is because the other person at a certain point has really uncovered the way that you think and has really dissected the way that you break down the game. And that's very vulnerable and it feels it makes you feel very exposed when somebody is kind of clued into your subconscious better than you are. And I think that because we negotiate on such subconsciously intimate terms, I think it is very expressive, and I think it's undeniable that the way that you think and the way that you adapt reflects the way that you think and adapt in all aspects of life. What do you think about all that?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think there's lots of like there's lots of channels to express yourself in this game in terms of the character you play, your play style, which options you go for. And it's very clear about like what your like intrinsic motivation is, like how are you winning? What's the most important thing to you? Is the most important thing playing the character that you love and like identifying with this character? Or is the most important thing winning and identifying with being someone who's really like a really strong competitor at this game? On the other hand, it's really easy to make like incorrect and generalized statements about people, which we've explained is like which we've explained is not, it's very dangerous sometimes. It's easy to kind of write someone off as a certain like like as a certain type of person, or as being characterizing them to have like a certain personality. I think one of the most important things to do is not to take this too seriously in terms of like you are exactly this person outside of the game. I think it's definitely connected, and we would be silly to not see that. We've see time and time again that yes, Smash is this really intimate experience. It is this conversation, and I do actually want to err on the side of being a little more dramatic about this because it is really cool. Like it it is a really cool experience to play a very close set with someone where you're both trading reads and trading like yeah trading probes into each other's mind. And it is incredibly cool, which is why it's really fun to be dramatic about it. And but I think it's also important just to put into perspective that you just shouldn't make like generalized statements about people just because of like certain things that they do in the game.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that there's a natural segue there. I mean, we touched on Mango earlier. A fan favorite for both his personality and his play style, and how they interlock. I think that's a really big reason to be a Mango fan. Is everybody kind of subscribes to not only the way he the way he thinks about the game, and how his play style represents that, right? Similarly, in Smash Four, you have Nairo. Very explosive character, being Zero Suit Samus. But even when he picks other characters, he really just seems to be so, calculatedly aggressive. I mean, I played against this guy back before I was that good at a major, and I had never felt so bad at the game until I played Nairo in bracket. He was just, you kind of learn. There's this rumor in Smash 4, you can just kind of play safe, wait for your opponent to mess up. Whatever that line of thinking was, Nairo was the exact opposite. I mean, I felt like I was in disadvantage the entire game. And I was like, man, I became a Nairo fan when that happened. I was like, that was impressive. That guy's sick. And, people love Nairo. Both, I'd say he might be the most, popular member of the Smash Bros. Community outside of Melee, right? So we're talking like Smash 4 Brawl, those side of things. And I think it's because both of his hilarious, fun-loving personality, but also how his play embodies what people think about him initially. So, what do you think about people's initial perspectives about top players, personalities? How does that, interfere with how people perceive their gameplay?
I think it's Nairo's an interesting case. When you just see him for the first time, I think I've watched a decent amount of his streams, and I've been like like somewhat of a Nairo fan here and there, and I do feel that he's just a very relaxed guy. Is very unoffensive, very at least in recent times, but he's a very just a chill guy, and you don't really see this in his gameplay, which is kind of the funniest thing. Like he actually has no chill in his gameplay. At least the way that he plays Zero Suit Samus, he kind of makes the entire game play like bend to his will, and he's just moving at a speed that you can't really comprehend unless you literally like go to the YouTube VOD and play at half speed. So I do feel like there is this disconnect here of someone who seems very relaxed and easygoing versus the play style where it's just very aggressive, extremely in your face, and will basically take every opportunity and every opening to the end of the earth.
Sure. Yeah, and I think on the opposite side of that spectrum, you have the zeros in his prime and the hungry boxes of the world. Zero on the contrary was known for his very methodical, slow, neutral based Diddy Kong, and I think part of the reason why a lot of people didn't like him when he was on top of things was merely based on the fact that he was winning everything. People like upsets, so he was an easy person to root against for a lot of the Smash community. But do you think that if he had Nairo's playstyle, let's say Zero was playing Nairo's Xerxes Samus, I mean literally copy and pasted, and Nairo was playing the methodical Diddy Kong, do you think that attitudes towards these players from the community directed at the players would be more or less the same as it was in reality?
Now, I'm going to call you out there and say that that is actually a question that is kind of a loaded question. Now, let me tell you why. I don't think that that case could be that. I don't think that I even want to go into that hypothetical. Now, here's why.
Okay.
Zero Suit Samus is an extremely volatile character. By definition, she's either ending the match in like 2 seconds, ending your stock immediately, or she's getting picked apart in neutral because her neutral tools are very like pokey, very nickel and dimey. I think Diddy Kong was the vessel that allowed Zero to win 50 tournaments. Uh, 50 tournaments in a row. I think that was the reason that gave him this like consistency. This character with a bunch of really really strong neutral options can be really consistent in neutral over and over again. Can basically play this beautiful perfect flow chart with this great captain of a mind that Zero was. I think people didn't like Zero. I think for basically that the reason that it's like yeah it was just this methodical destruction every single time. Now you pose the question that if he had Nairo's playstyle, would people like him? And probably, but I want to be realistic here, and I don't think he would have won that many tournaments in a row.
Yeah.
And I do want to I don't and I, it's like obviously is that like dodging your question? I don't think so because I think the most important thing is to focus on the fact that people's playstyle oftentimes also emulate their results.
Hmm.
And I think that can also be really well, like we can bring a really nice analog there with you actually. I think that consistent Falcon that's always that's like down to go for like as many jabs or back airs as you need to close out a stock. It kind of really complemented your Cloud play style to be this really consistent, really strong user of Cloud's amazing tools. And that mentality to just play really consistently, really methodically was what allowed you to win a majority of Central Coast tournaments.
Yeah, sure. But sure, sure. I get what you're saying. I wonder. I mean, do you think that on a more simple, if I broke the question down in simpler terms, like, okay, what if Zero just had some, crazy play style and won? Like, do you think, or the other way, he played super super campy, never approached and played like Bayonetta and just literally planked for 5 minutes each game. Yeah,
I think that's too easy of a question. That's the only thing. It's like, yeah, I think if he had like a stronger, if he had like a really fun play style to watch, of course everyone would probably like him more. I think that's pretty straightforward.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to make it. I just didn't want to make it too easy for you.
Yeah,
But
no, I feel
like,
it.
like
I guess what I'm really wondering is to what degree does the perception of someone's play, you know, actually influence their perception of the player themselves as a person? And I guess it's unfair for me to ask you that. I mean, it's an impossible question to answer it. So fair enough.
I mean, the thing is, it's. I think you bring up a really good point, though. The point to take away there is the fact that yes, the character that someone's playing and their playstyle will affect public opinion of them and will affect how the community thinks about them. Of course, I think that if Nairo won 50 tournaments in a row, I think it was 50 or 54, I'm not really sure the
Zero? I
exact
think you
number.
won 56 or 58 or something like that.
Okay. Well, it was all of
It was a
those
lot.
are
It was a lot.
all of those are incredible numbers. And I think that if he did have Nairo's play style and won that many tournaments, very unlikely, by the way, especially with a character like Zero Suit, I think he would have still like engendered some like some hate here and there just for the fact that people would always be rooting against the underdog.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that I think it's hard to it's impossible to go to win that many times and not develop like a decent amount of people that just want to see you lose. I think that's so it's really a crossover. I don't think it would have been as bad as it as Zero's position it was because he was just playing this character that was really methodical and didn't have too many super exciting things. Obviously, there's some really cool tech with Diddy Kong, and I think that he did do a lot of really cool things. But obviously, Zero Suit's way flashier, way more exciting, way more pedal to the metal. So you can really like and Nairo's play style shows that, and he's very visceral in the way that he takes apart his opponents.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. Well, yeah. I mean, I think so far we've done a good job of kind of identifying the correlation or you know the reason why personalities and playstyles are so interconnected, and I want you to talk about, you know, how does your playstyle really form your identity, right? And also to piggyback on that, um, how much of your Smash identity is, you know, can speak for how you are as a person. You know, I think that if you look at some of the people that we mentioned earlier, let's talk about Nairo. You know, Nairo has this kind of air about him. He's this confident. When you see him walking around a tournament, he has this, he looks like a confident guy, and his play style reflects that, right? So, what's the difference between the player and the person?
Um, I think I think we've touched on a little bit of this, a little bit of this before, but to really go into what the difference is between the player and the person, I think again we have to really look subconsciously. I really want to get into why it is also good to look inside oneself. Now, something that we bring up on this podcast a lot and will continue to, because I think it's one of the most important things in life and in improving at the game, is introspection. Understanding who you are as a person will help you in your game and help you understand what kind of player you are. I think on a personal level, we can really observe this connection between our personality outside of the game and the person inside the game. So to answer your question, I want to take it in this really cool personal journey. Now here's what I want you to do. I want you to really try to characterize yourself in a few words. Like pick 3 to 5 words of like that just represent you as a person outside of the game. And I want you to try and connect that to like how you play inside the game. And I want you to connect that to not only the way that you play, but also your goals in the game. What really defines you as a player? Do you really like pulling off footstool combos? Do you really like showing off your really fancy tech, or do you really like winning? Do you really like seeing the look on your opponent's face when you've just done DK's ding dong like 5 or 6 times in a row? Do you really enjoy the randomness of getting a game and watch down throw 9? Are you someone that goes for misfires and neutral? Like I want I think that's a question that is best answered when you look inside yourself. I think if you can't see that inside yourself, it's very difficult to believe it externally. I think I personally really see it. I think some very simple adjectives I would use to describe myself are calculated, confident, and basically a little bit strong headed. I think this
A little bit.
really I think this really plays out well in my play style. I'm a DK main, as I've said before, and I really like getting the cargo up, throw up, air confirm as every single time, just because it is really funny to do over and over again, and it is really consistent. Obviously, I've developed my play around other tools, but but everything is very calculated. The percentages that I keep everyone at is calculated. Like I love playing this extra mini game of of how much am I allowed to hit someone before I take them out of the combo window. Uh, I think that is why that is. I think everyone should kind of look into themselves and see if they see that. And the reason that I'm able to see it in other people partially comes from the fact that I can definitely see the analog between my persona outside of the game and my playstyle and my goals inside of the game.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that you brought up a lot of really good points, and I appreciate you kind of walking uh, through how you view yourself in terms of of a player and as a person. And I'd like to answer your question. I think that me personally, I'm a very fun loving, kind of goofy, silly guy. I am. That's how I will immediately. If if I ever meet one of you guys at a tournament or something, and we talk, you'll notice I'm a pretty goofy, outgoing guy. Um, Maybe it's just I'm a ginger. I don't know. But uh, but deep down, I'm a very prideful person. I'm extremely competitive, and for me, my own success is of dire importance to me. I like proving my competence. I mean, if I'm just looking, if I'm really psychoanalyzing myself, I really like to be validated. I really like to succeed and have measurable success. And for me, how that manifests in my gameplay is I'm extremely try hard. You know, I will I will push any advantage I have as high as I can go. I won't care how it makes me look. I just want to win and I want to feel validated by my success. And that's an interesting point you touched on earlier, Abby. I think that Smash maybe is not this all encompassing portrayal of how you are as a person, but at least it can at the very least latch on to a certain aspect of your personality and really take hold of it and be shown in your gameplay.
Yeah, I think that's a really good introspective journey that you took us through with yourself. I would agree that's something that I've seen in you as a person. I really resonate with a lot of the things that you said. I think that comes out very clearly in your gameplay. And I encourage everyone to actually do this themselves. And I think when they look deep down at who they are, not just looking at the surface, because as we saw, Dane, your gameplay does not reflect these very surface level interactions that you have with people. And that's why people can very quickly jump and make these claims that, you know what, these your Smash in-game persona and your external personality are completely different, therefore they have to be unrelated. Or rather, they have like your actual personality and Smash in-game persona have to be unrelated. And I think the biggest correlation is subconscious. And I think that's the most important thing that we want to look at instead of basically encouraging this culture of reducing people and making reductive arguments about people just based off of like external personality that you can only like basically see on the surface.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touched on it exactly why all of this is worth it. Why is it worth thinking about these kind of things in these terms? Beyond it just being cool. I mean, it's cool to really identify with your playstyle. I mean, of course, surface level, but beyond that, I would argue that there's a lot of merit to self-discovery and to practicing self-intimacy. So as you look at how your own personality relates to your playstyle, you're also becoming more self-aware in general. And what being self-aware does, especially in a Smash Bros. Context, is it provides you agency. So what does that mean? The moment that you understand why you play and what you want out of your play, you you make yourself completely accountable for the things that you do. Say I understand. I want to play to win. I'm a try hard. You know, and if somebody shames me for playing a really lame cloud, or if I'm uh, performing in a certain way, I can understand. Look, this is why it's important to me, and I can really own it. I can find comfort in that. Abi, what do you think? I mean, why do you think? What do you think this is all worth?
I think you touched on the reason why this is really important really well, and I think it is absolutely imperative to look inside you as a person and understand where you get your happiness from. I think we talked about why people burn out in this game in our second episode, and a lot of the time, I think people burn out a lot of the time because their goals, who they are as a person, and what they do in game are all in discord. And what happens is that when all of these things aren't lining up, and when people don't truly look into themselves as a person and understand what they really want in the game, this you often get these really discordant thoughts, and you aren't really sure about your identity, you aren't sure what you contribute, you aren't happy about how you're performing in or but you aren't like really enjoying the game at all. So I think it's absolutely important to look deep inside of you and really understand like how you are connected to the game, and all of these really cool channels that express yourself in how you play, the character that you pick, and your goals in the game, whether it is to top eight a local, to get on your PR, or to be the number one in your region, or even to to pull off like really cool combos in tournament, and to basically like style on people. What's your true goal? And once you're able to kind of lock that down, I think, and once you're able to line up all of these things, your progression, not only as a player but also as an individual, becomes a lot more clear. And I think that is really the value of why connecting both your personality outside of the game and your in-game play is really important, and not just something that's looked at as like a fun novel idea.
Abi, I think that you did an amazing job of wrapping that up. So thank you for that. But I think that we, at least for now, have spoken enough about this whole topic. I do want to say, put it on the record, Minabi, we do intend to get back to this topic with a guest in the future. We don't have any dates or guests announced at the moment, but keep your ears out if you want us to elaborate more on this. We very likely will in the future. That said, Abi, it's time that we pivot to Twitter.
All right. So are we going to answer some questions?
We're going to answer some questions. And first off, we got a question from Henry. His at is at Batracuda. And I liked this question a lot. I thought it was a great question. And Henry, we appreciate you listening, man. So thank you. And thank you for the question. The question reads, is there a set practice regimen that will work for all players? Or does everyone need to figure out what works for them? If it is universal, what is it? If it is unique per player, how do you go about finding it? And I think that's a great question, Avi. Do you have any opening thoughts?
Sure. I'll jump into a little bit of what I said last week, in that you are put into three different groups: people who have time, people who don't have time, and then people in the middle. I think that's the most basic way of breaking it up in terms of what is the most important things to practice. Now, obviously, it's going to be different character by character. If you play a low tier character, you're going to have to practice all of your niche stuff, because you pulling surprises on people and surprise and like basically shocking people with matchup unfamiliarity is how you win with a low tier. If you play a mid tier, you have to both practice your decent options that a mid tier affords you, and your crazy options that you need, that matchup unfamiliarity will help you win games with. Now, if you're a high tier, you just practice all of your really good options. And in my opinion, if you play a high tier, your best practice or your better practice usually comes from playing other people. There's usually a lot of the high tiers tools are usually pretty straightforward, although there's some stuff that you'll always need to practice, like movement with cloud, Diddy like side B reverse, momentum cancels, and Bayonetta combos. There's always going to be these things that you need to practice, but you don't have as much of an onus to actually go out and practice a bunch of these really niche things. And when you get into the time aspect of it, it really depends. You gotta probably find like a nice balance between practicing by yourself and and finding some really diverse group of people to play with.
In terms of a universal regimen, Henry, I would say it's important for everybody. I mean, this is how human psychology works, to play with a high frequency and not necessarily. So what I mean by that is play, practice your tech, especially when Ultimate comes out, or if you're picking up a new character, or just in general. Practice your tech for 20, 30 minutes while you're watching some YouTube or listening to this podcast or just chilling in your room. Practice it for 30 minutes or so. Do that, 5 days a week, and you'll be so surprised how quickly you learn. Oftentimes people will play once in a blue moon and they'll have these epic, like 8-hour long sessions. Um, what you do is your prerogative, and how you enjoy the game is up to you. But deliberately practicing for a small amount of time very often is universally helpful. I think we go on to the next question, Abby. So you want to read this one?
Yeah, I mean, just to wrap up the last thing, absolutely agree. You aren't getting paid for overtime in Smash, so so definitely don't do more than you need to. Sure, let's go on to Apokaka at. I'm sure I pronounced that in the worst way possible. But
at Edinsky21.
Yes, at Edinsky21.
Thank you for your question, Apokaka.
Will you be making a tier list for Smash Ultimate? If you played the demo, do you have a draft for a tier list already done?
So, Apokaka, the thing is neither of us have played the demo yet. Unfortunately, I really wish we could have. It just hasn't really been available to either of us. We're working men. We haven't been able to travel for it. So, we have not played the demo. Will we be making a tier list? I mean, I don't see why not. We could, at the very least. I promise you, we'll give our impressions on what characters seem to be very good. You'll definitely get our impressions on the meta of Smash Ultimate for sure. Whether or not we'll do a formal tier list, I mean, if there's demand for one, that'd be a fun episode, Abby.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we could really utilize our experience in playing the game to create an interesting tier list. Obviously, I think tier lists are really subjective, and really focused on the matchups that you know really well, which is why I don't think they're always great at estimating a character's abilities. In reality, I think you have to always like balance pro results and like potential, and it's kind of a massive mess. But I do like the idea of jumping to that. I think a beyond the metagame tier list would kind of be cool to throw on the website.
Let's do it. Let's just say yes.
Yeah.
Let's do it. We'll do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so next question from Cetra, a good friend of ours. How do you think players who successfully juggle multiple characters at a top level interchangeably are able to do so? So, we can reference like the tweaks of the world, the MK Leos of the world, players that have three or four characters that they can whip out at any given time. And I think there's two main factors here, etc. One being that having core fundamentals and understanding of the game's mechanics, how to adapt, and also what other characters are capable of, like your opponent's character, are all super underrated aspects of top level play. That all these guys are masters of all those things. Your actual character proficiency does not at all interact with your ability to adapt or your knowledge of general mechanics. So already top players are starting off at a really big advantage there, right? When picking up a new character. That said, a lot of these guys, I mean, Smash is their thing. I don't think that it takes. I don't think that the top players put in a crazy amount of time for their secondaries. I think that they prepare them more for specific matchups and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that they have really focused plans. You'll see, look, Larry's pulled out his Diddy Kong against Bayos, and MK Leo pulled out his Meta Knight versus Zero's Diddy Kong to great success, and you kind of see these picks. So I don't think that they're necessarily masters of all characters in all specific instances, yet they have a rehearsed, practiced, situation where they bring it out and they've rehearsed it. That's my opinion. What do you think, Abby?
I think there's just a lot of basic Smash things that cross over with characters, especially the top tiers. Like I can confidently play most top tier characters because just having good options and like and just uh, having good buttons to throw out is usually conducive to being able to learn a character well. I think that your point that you brought up, which is my answer to this question, is the fact that matchup knowledge is the most important thing in Smash 4, in my opinion. So being able to carry that knowledge across characters and being able to understand the game from playing it so much is the most important thing, because if you know, for example, if you know what DK's win condition is, if you know what Luigi's win condition is, and you understand what tools work against that character, you can make whatever character that you're playing work to perfectly counter that. And so what the top player is thinking is not necessarily like, how am I playing my character, because they pick up characters really fast. They're more thinking about, how do I play against this specific character. Like I've used the analogy before, when you're playing the piano, you don't look at the music. Oh, sorry, you don't look at your hands when you're playing. You look at the music. Similarly, when top players pick up new characters, they're still looking at their opponent. They're like, obviously there's going to be some things that are unfamiliar to them, but they've watched this game and interacted with it on such a crazy level that they're kind of able to just translate a lot of things immediately into the game.
I think that was a really good answer, Abby. You want to read the next one?
Sure. What do you do when you lose confidence in your main versus a certain matchup? Some matchups can feel so hopeless sometimes. It's from Matan Diamond Dawn Fan. That is a great question. I think you, Peon, should go into that.
Yeah, so I think that is a very good question, right? And now this is I have a very simple answer to this. I've thought about this a lot, so thank you for the question, Matan. The answer to what do you do if you lose confidence in your main versus a certain matchup? You have two options. Simply, you can either A, stick it out and keep playing the bad matchup with your main, or B, counterpick. Right? Obviously. So how do you decide which one's best for you? Here's the thing. If let's say you're a villager and you're playing against a cloud, and you lose the set as it's a notoriously bad matchup for villager. Villager mains hate cloud, and rightly so. It's a terrible matchup. If after the set ends and one of the thoughts in your mind is, man, this matchup sucks, DLC is broken, I hate this game was better off without DLC, yada yada. At that point, I don't care. I don't want you to ever think about it again. I just want you to pick up a counter pick, because you are not a mid tier player. You are not a character a character specialist. You don't have the right mindset. I mean, you look at Fatality, you look at Elegant, people like that who play these kind of like higher mid tier characters who just embody and love their characters. When they lose, they always say things like, there's a way. Fatality, famous for his like 40-minute rant about how Bayonetta is not that bad, even though that matchup's terrible. They're optimists. If you're not an optimist, I'd say pick a counter pick. There's no shame in that, and that could be fun. Learn a new character, take on that challenge, and give it a try. That's my opinion. What about you, Abby?
I think you answered that really well. I don't think I have much to add to that, actually. I think that is really dependent on your mentality. I absolutely agree. I think that there's some cases in which people are losing their ability to develop their main in ways just because they're really focused on counterpicking a specific character. I think that the one thing that I guess I would add to that is to make sure to not spend excess amount of time on a counterpick character that you'll only play for one matchup. You're much better off just picking your main and developing skills that would cross over into that matchup anyway. But if you're absolutely certain, like Dane said, if you're absolutely certain that you're not going to win, yeah, it's not worth your time. just pick up a new character. And if you're really just frustrated by it, yeah, just pick up a different character.
So we have one more question from the great Bradley Tate asking, why is Game Watch the best character? Abby, you have any words on this one?
I think Game & Watch, when you play, as I've said before, when you play the white colored Game & Watch on Final Destination and the whole screen illuminates in this huge flash of light, you cannot actually see Game & Watch. In that moment, and in that exact moment, Game & Watch is absolutely the best character in the game.
I couldn't agree more.
Every other time, no. In that moment, Game & Watch is the best character.
You just pause the game on your Wii U and just walk away. He's frozen in time as the number one on the tier list. Okay, so I think it's time for something special, Abby.
Absolutely. And if I can guess correctly, it is time to announce the winner of our giveaway.
So to enter this contest, all you need to do is retweet, our tweet on the Twitter that announced the contest and give us a follow. And I'm happy to tell you that I know the name of that winner, Abby.
Do you? I think I know the name of that winner too. All right, you want to do a little drum roll, or?
Well, you're the drummer.
Okay. Well.
And the winner is Balake! So congratulations to Balake. Balake was randomly selected and is now the owner of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, compliments of Beyond the Metagame. So
yeah, congrats!
Congratulations. So Abby, I believe this brings us to the end of our show. Any closing thoughts on the matter?
Yeah, I think we did a really good job of answering the question: is our in-game personality correlated with external factors such as our personality or maybe our deeper subconscious personality? We talked about what are the important things that we can do as players to look into ourselves and understand what our goals are as players and how we can see that come alive in our gameplay and in our results as players. And I think we explained really well why Smash is a really great medium for this when we're looking at it in the right lens. And I think with that, we've wrapped up this episode on identity.
Absolutely, Abby. Thank you. So with that, let's wrap up this episode. Abby, where can people find you?
People can find me at A Vaidyanatha.
Good luck spelling that one. And you can find me at Peon_GCE. And you can find the podcast at Beyond Metagame. Twitter did not give us any room for the. So with that, thank you guys so much for all the support, for watching. We're humbled. We're motivated by it. Thank you for all the questions this week. And take care.